All right, let's do it.
Cool.
Welcome, Dr. Cannon. Are you a doctor?
In your mind only.
How are things? Are you all right?
Doing well. Yes, best we
Man.
can be. How about yourself?
Same too. Adjusting, doing well. I appreciate you making the time for this conversation today. Thank you very much for
Oh,
that.
no, my pleasure.
Um, with that, just for the folks that'll watch it now for the first time, is um, the primary place that we're kind of putting this is with students in 255. It may be applicable to your 255 as well. I think John took our conversation, put it in cinematography. So I think our audiences are kids that we have been working with on the project, but this might give us an opportunity to explain a little bit more about what we're doing. That was certainly the case with John, and then I have Sarah lined up and Grant lined up to talk a little bit about
Great.
editing,
Yeah.
and we haven't been able to do this before, so it may be something that we keep in the future. Um, just so people start to get a big picture idea about what's going on. So, with that said, kind of know, at least on our side of the house, that our audience is somewhat new, probably to acting, and anything that you can do to shed light on it with some of the examples that we have lined up today would be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely.
So kind of with that said, let's hop into it. And I know for many people on the technical side, it's a little bit of a mystery as far as how to work with actors and do it. Could you take a second, couple seconds, and just go over? Is there a general philosophy about acting for the camera that you use and that you practice with your students? Could we start there?
Yeah, sounds good. And yes, there is. I think often as acting has developed over the decades, and especially with the introduction of cameras and film, is that you got a confusion for a long time, even on the performance side of how does one do this thing? And so a lot of early performances, you see them very theatrical and, they get a little bit larger sometimes. And then a few actors started to figure it out. That what you're really looking for, if you fast forward all the way to our time, what you're really looking for is connection and personalization, is that there is something that's believable about what the actor is doing, that hopefully if they do it well, the audience forgets they're watching an actor for a minute. We always come with the suspension of disbelief. We know it's a movie, we know it's not real, we know the effects are have been carefully planned, and people aren't really going through these things. But if the actor makes that connection, then you lose that, you forget for a minute, and you get sucked into the reality of their life and their situation. And then that creates the catharsis that goes all the way back to the Greeks and the origins of performance, right? Is that I connect with this actor as if they were a real person. And so that's what we're looking for. And that's what, for me, it's been my philosophy for a long time, is that if you don't have that, then you're not really acting. You may have great personality, and a lot of times that can come across on camera. People that are really charismatic. A lot of movie stars are like that. They're not necessarily actors. They're just really charismatic, and that's not bad. It's just it's different. But if you want to talk about acting and the craft of it and what the professional will do when they get placed on their mark, placed in the chair, the camera's set, and action is called, what do they do? And that's what it is. It doesn't begin there. They have to come into that moment having that connection and attempting to make it. And there's a lot of various ways we can do that. I'll probably be able to point out as we go through. What's the connection we're
Great,
trying to work on right
great.
here. What is the personal? How do you make it personal? But it's of paramount importance, and it's often overlooked, even sometimes on the performance side. Is that, oh well, I'll just say my lines, open my mouth, we'll see what happens, right? And that's not what we want to do. We want to know exactly what we're doing, and then if something surprising happens, the actor reacts as the character, and that gets a beautiful moment.
Mm.
That
Well,
doesn't happen without planning.
well done. Well said. Well said. Well, that's probably a good background, and now we have a couple of things that maybe we could take a look at together, and love to hear your thoughts as it plays. And what are you looking for? What do you uh, kind of your thought process as we watch a scene play out? And I think the first one that we have is actually kind of a rough assembly. There's a couple of different shots there, and I think you have that on your end. So
Yeah, great.
you want to take and let's roll that, and
Let's do it.
anything that comes to your mind would be incredibly helpful.
Excellent. Okay. So here we go. I think we got that up. Yeah. Great. Okay.
Anyways, I'm totally screwed. I'm gonna have to quit school to get a full-time job or something. Maybe I can go to nursing school.
Okay. Right off the bat.
Nice.
This is actually a really good example of something that's really important in performance. It's called the moment before. And in this particular case, the reason I like it is that we kind of see the moment before for the character of Jeannie.
Yeah.
We see it a little bit. You don't always see it. For instance, we saw Jeannie, but we didn't see Mackenzie's moment before. But you can still see it. That's what is really cool about this. So what I'm looking for when a scene begins, especially one like this, is there the presence of that moment before? And then you'll know that by if it translates right into the scene. So what a moment before is that we all have moments before in life that we walk into. I mean, you and I had a moment before today. Like, what
Sure.
did we do right before we got online here, right?
Right.
And maybe something happened, or we found out some news, or we talked to somebody before we came in here, and then that affected how we came in. Maybe I wasn't as excited coming in today because I just found out something that was upsetting, or vice versa. I found out some really good news, and so that changes even how we talk to you, even though you and I may never talk about that, right? Even though I may not say, oh man, it's been a rough morning, or it still might carry over for me. And so characters are no different. And what you have here is obviously Mackenzie's moment before is thinking and contemplating what's she going to do with this pregnancy that she now has to deal with.
Mhm.
But Jeannie had a really interesting too. It's like, what went into making the tea? Why did she choose to do that? I would be exploring that with the actor. It's like, why did you go over there? Was it because you were nervous about talking to her, so the tea was just an excuse? Or was it because you wanted to help her and this is the only way you could? It's like, let me make you some tea. This is different. All of that goes into that one moment when she turned around to walk
Brilliant.
to the table. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really helpful, and that's great information. I think specifically here now, and everybody's read the script and kind of has an idea of it. And actually, we have a clip from just before where they're on the stairway, and I think this is a moment for Jeannie, her character, because she's the one that shifts the conversation. And does so by saying, let me make you some tea. And we kind of slam cut from that stairwell to here. And it's interesting with both these characters because they start to change from the pilot and from episode 1 and 2. Mac isn't quite so self-absorbed, and she and Jeannie are kind of reaching out a little bit to establish this relationship together. And this is one of those first opportunities, if I remember correctly.
Yes. And you bring up an excellent point there as well, is when you do a leading role or a role that appears in multiple scenes in a narrative on camera situation, there is another reality the actor has to look at is what is my arc, because it's out of order. In the theater, for you know, since the inception of modern acting with Stanislavski and a lot of his theories, the arc of the character was always important, and it remains important. But the difference is on stage, once the lights go up, you have a linear reality in which you can create that arc over the 2 hours. You're not going back and forth. Now you're shooting over, 3 months, 6, maybe more, out of order. And so the need for these actors to understand what you just said is of paramount importance, because they wouldn't have just shot that scene, right? That was
Right.
done last week, or it might not even have been done yet. We might
Right.
shoot that later.
Absolutely.
And then so then you have to, I take actors through a way to craft a script similar to the way we do it when we direct, right? We have a shot list. Well, actors have beats, emotional journeys that they take in the script. And as an actor myself, I always had the script on set, even though I would have it over the side so that I could, before I go into the scene, I look at the scene before. I look at where it was, right? And I'm
Sure.
charting the emotional journey and the development, as we do in life all the time, but we never really think about it, right? The actor has to think about every moment.
Fantastic.
Great point, yeah.
Brilliant information. Thank you.
Yeah. And let me, can I take it back for a second?
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
that's cool. To kind of just articulate what we're showing here is, we can flip
Anyways,
this down a little bit.
I'm
We'll watch Jeannie
totally
here.
screwed.
Let's watch Alicia.
I'm
So you see how she's
gonna have-
approaching. See, immediately she turns around. She's focused on the practical
Anyway.
element of don't spill the tea, which I love, because it's real life, right? But then right here, look at this
Totally
face. Look at
Yep.
the emotion that's coming here.
I'm
That's connected directly to
gonna
what
have
you were just
quit
saying happened in the
school to
scene
get a
before.
full-time job or
Brilliant.
And then the way she looks at her,
maybe I can go to
coming up right there.
Pearson's.
Now
What-
that's telling me there's a moment before, and an active one at that, because what she's saying, I have everything I want right now is to how she feels about Mackenzie and her relationship to all of this, right? All in with that
Absolutely.
one moment. And that a moment before is how you do that, how you accomplish that.
I love that. One of the things that stands out to me is we're looking at two different shots. So the consistency between where her head's at and what we see from her, it has to be there, and it is
Yeah.
here. You almost don't even see this cut between her walk up and then this two shot.
Yeah, totally. It's really good work. They did well. This is an example of what it should look like, right?
Nice.
And
Yeah.
then now the editor, now the director has the option of, depending on the coverage, to pick those moments, right? Whereas in the theater, this is all we'd see, right? I mean, and
Right.
not even necessarily this close, depending on where you're sitting.
Absolutely.
And so sometimes it's much larger, but it's still coming from the same place. That is important. Like theater, film, television are all the same in what we're talking about. Then some of the aspects of delivery are different between the two mediums, but just we gotta have it.
We've both been able to watch these two develop, and there's just no doubt right from the beginning they have some chemistry, and it continues to develop. When let's step back just for a sec. When you cast these two, had you seen them perform together?
And not together, no. The first time was when we called back and we had them read together, right?
Nice.
Initially, but no.
Wonderful
and that's-
choice.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing when you know, especially that's a good thing to talk about too, is something we don't touch on a lot, is casting, right? It's just like how it goes into casting and what do you look for? And I look for that connection. I look for, first of all, casting it's evolved. I think it's even going to evolve more now, with our sort of new world situation. It's like, okay, you could see if an actor can act. That becomes evident pretty quickly. What a casting director or a director should really be looking for is when you get them together in a situation like this, where this character relationship is so important to the story that you're trying to capture, that you're going to be shooting, is you need them to connect. And then you need to know if the actor can do that. And that's usually, for me, the callbacks are the most important, because I'll know if you can act within like a few seconds. It's like you do your monologue of a scene, like, okay, you can do this. Now I need to know if you understand the character and you can play with somebody else. And that
Very nice.
becomes, so for both of them, I had worked with them before, not together, right? So it was evident they were fantastic actors, and they are. But then it was like, okay, are they right for this role? And they're right for each other. And
Nice.
they were. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, excellent, wonderful decisions.
Cool. All right, should we watch some more?
Yeah,
Let's,
please. This is a
yeah,
blast.
here we go.
Why did I break up with him? I should have just wrote it out.
No. F this, Mackenzie. We're gonna call this butthead up right now and make this right. It's his baby. So what? Just because it's physically in your body, it means your life goes out the window? I don't think so.
Okay. I got this.
Cool. Okay. This is a good one to kind of talk reactions,
Nice.
more focused on Mackenzie. But I'll start with, there was a nice transition there that kind of relates to what we were just talking about that Alicia did. And then there was that, the close-up that got cut in, is that she made a beat transition. So when I was talking earlier about how you can score your script, you know, actors actually score scripts or can score scripts, and similar to the way a musician writes a piece of music.
Mhm.
And that becomes like a really beautiful analogy, I think, is just sort of like the, you know, like Richard Wagner's theory of like art as a total thing, right? Is like theater as a total work of art. It's like all elements combined. And I always like to think about that in thinking of scoring. It's like a musician is looking at a piece of music, playing it, but then when jazz comes in, you know, it's like you may have a structure, but then you improv off the top of that. And so what I
Absolutely.
talk to actors a lot about is that have your structure, because then there may be a jazz moment, right? There may be a moment where something just happens and you go with it, but you wouldn't be able to really do that effectively if you didn't have that base and that
Right.
foundation.
Absolutely. That
And
makes sense.
yeah, and it's really important. And for moments like this, is that Alicia had to make a character transition. It's like, so she has her moment before, she's coming in. One of the beautiful things about the moment before is that you don't, once again, as an actor you do, but the character doesn't know what's going to happen.
Happen.
We
Right.
don't in life. Like you and I knew we were coming here today and we
Yep.
were going to talk about this. We didn't really know exactly how this would play out, right? We
Right.
had an idea, but we didn't know. Like I might say something that you didn't expect, or you might say something that I didn't expect, and then we adapt to that. Well, characters need to be the same thing, and that's why we have the beats. And so right here, she had a beat shift when it was this idea of, you know, okay, well, let's talk about the details of this situation now. She
Right.
just knew it in general, right? And so you saw that great beat shift as her emotion changed, right? We saw that. Is
Absolutely.
Alicia, right here, so we know what we're talking about, and then we can talk about those reactions. But it was this close up here, so
Up with him. I should have just wrote it out.
I should have
No.
just wrote it out. So that's the first time Jeannie has heard that, right? Even though Alicia knew it because we rehearsed it and gone over it. That's the first time Jeannie had heard that. And you can tell how Jeannie feels about it because of Alicia's excellent choice there. Just absolutely not. You're not going to do that. It was like there was a little bit of an anger there. It's like, no, I'm going to help you stand up for your rights here. I mean, all that in that one moment. And the audience doesn't necessarily think about that
Sure.
right away, but they're engaged. That thing that goes all the way back to the catharsis that I said before is they're engaged. And especially maybe they've been in this situation. Maybe they know somebody in this situation. Even if they haven't, they're imagining, what if I was, all because of these performances, if that kind of helps. You know?
Yeah, it helps a lot. One of the things that I think makes the characters and then hopefully the narrative engaging and interesting is this is new for the audience in watching this character. She's reaching out, she's taking control, and this is not who we've seen in her character before. So to watch that happen here, I think drives narrative and what she's bringing to it is just fantastic because of that.
Yes, and it really is. And that's an excellent point too, is that would be a conversation a director could have with their actor of, hey, don't, and Alicia and I actually talked about this a lot. It's like, let's let Jeannie develop. Like, don't do too much too soon. Like, let's
Right.
let we know she's going to develop, and then ultimately as a director, it's more about having that conversation with your actor, not just telling them what to do. Um, I, all actors have stories of directors they've worked for that are like that. This happens a lot, personally. And I think I know we've talked about this a lot. We feel the same.
Yeah.
Is that isn't the way to do it. That isn't the way to approach as a director. It's not the way to talk to actors because it doesn't get you what you want, which is authenticity at the end. To actually talk to an actor and say, hey, here's the way I'm seeing it. What are you feeling? And then they're like, oh yeah, no, I think this is her moment. And sometimes I've even had actors say, and so like, help me. It's like, if I start to do too much, let me know because I want to save it for that moment, right?
Brilliant.
And that
Brilliant.
can be fun. That's when it gets fun, right?
Very nice. Thank you.
No problem. But that's good stuff. And okay, let's look at this medium close up
So
here.
what? Just because it's physically in your body, it means your life goes out the window? I don't think so.
Okay. This is another great example of something completely different is that there is a misconception in screen acting that all you have to do is do less. So it's like coming from the theater to film. It's like, just do less. Like, how do you act on film? Just do less. No, it's too much. Don't do too much. I've even seen it made fun of at times in films, comedy films. Like, you're doing too much. Too less, do less, do less. And it's really not, that actually isn't accurate. It is a little bit. It depends on the actor. If an actor has heavy theater training, then they may need, when they first come to this environment, that might be good advice. Like, do less for now because you're not used to that. But ultimately, it isn't just the blanket advice, right? Because it won't work. Because in this situation, if Lexi would have done less, we wouldn't have gotten those reactions. And one of the things, yeah, and it's different because in real life, if this was a real life scene, she probably wouldn't have reacted that much on her face. She probably would have wanted to hide more, like we all do in life.
Right.
But the drama reality, not only is it accelerated, meaning that a character in a drama world experiences things faster than we do in real life. You know, it's nonetheless potent, but it just goes faster, right? That's why characters are always in conflict, because otherwise you bore your audience to tears, right? You have to move somewhere within the 2 hours or less. And so that then demands a few things that aren't exactly realistic. And this is one of them, is these reactions are totally well done and they're authentic. But when you really think about it, they're not really realistic. You know, it's to just that she's going to just expose herself that much, that often. But that's what we need. The audience needs that information. And so that is something actors have to do when they work on camera. Ironically, they don't necessarily really have to do that a lot on stage. So then camera work becomes less realistic for an actor than working on the stage, which is something fun, you know, and you wouldn't think of that, you know, right away. You know, no, you would think, oh, stage is so theatrical. How can that be so real? I mean, this is real. Well, it's only realistic because we see the final product.
Right.
Because at this moment, she's got lights in her face. She's got a ton of people standing around, as everybody knows, because they were there. She's got you, me, or somebody else whispering in her ear saying, oh, do this, do that. Oh, sit here. Oh, make sure you look over this way. She's got direction coming from 10 different people. And yet she's got to make it look like none of that is happening. And she is reacting authentically, yet a little bit exaggerated.
Well, and I love it, Chris, because it's a reaction to, again, Jeannie as a character. The surprise here is, because we're still hearing Jeannie, but what Lexi's given us with this kind of a reaction is, this is a change. This is not the Jeannie that we know up to this point. I mean, it's a really brilliant move on her part in being in that moment, I guess, and interacting with Jeannie and giving these visual cues about this change that's going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're right. You're so right about that. We know more about Jeannie now based on these reactions that we would have known otherwise. And no dialogue was mentioned, right?
No dialogue.
Nobody was said.
Right.
It's really, really good. Great example of that. All right. More. Here we go.
I got this pamphlet from the clinic about single parenting, and the lady from the health center said that this is pretty common and that there used to be a group of pregnant students, but the school cut funding, so.
Carlos? Listen, you little wannabe SoundCloud rapper. You're gonna be a dad whether you like it
What
or
the
not.
fuck? You got punked!
Okay, yeah, I remember we had fun doing that one too.
Yeah.
We did it, yeah. Another great reaction from Lexi, with Mackenzie not really knowing what Jeannie was doing, and then you saw the moment of realization, right? And we have to remember they absolutely knew that was coming because we'd rehearsed this in multiple takes. They'd read the script, but it appeared as though she really realized and then reacted. So
Absolutely.
these are really good examples of what you're looking for. Also, I'd like to point out, I mean, just the technical prowess that kind of both Lexi and Alicia demonstrated here, that you can see in this this wider shot, is that you got to think about it. It's like we asked them to do all of that blocking. She had to turn and get the pamphlet. She had to come back to the table. The phone had to be grabbed at a certain moment and then dialed. And all of this stuff had to happen in a single shot. And they had to execute that. And we can see that they did it because we didn't cut away here in this rough cut.
Right.
That they did it as this is almost where it's like, it doesn't work to say, okay, do less, because this was almost theatrical. This was a play. Like they had to execute all this blocking as if it was live and there was an audience and you can't stop and redo. And that is so important, I think, for directors to recognize, or aspiring directors in this medium, is that you're asking your actors to do a lot. It's a misconception that they just, with that old adage of, well, just get on camera, say your lines and look pretty, right? That old thing. It's like, why don't you just do that? I once heard the legendary silver screen star Kim Novak. You know, she's in Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo with Jimmy Stewart. And she talked about, what was it like for you in Hollywood? It's like at the beginning they wouldn't take me serious as an actor. They would just say, "Just look pretty, Kim. Just stand there, look pretty, look pretty." She's like, "But that's not what this is." And so that's a really good example, is that you've got to execute some type of reality here that isn't real at all, right? And get it right on the mark where they need it to be, and then try to make a connection with an audience through the camera on top of it. Sometimes theater, you can sense an audience. It's live.
Sure.
You can't do that here. The camera is what you're performing for, and it's inanimate, but yet it sees everything, and you've got to give it something to look at. Really
a couple of thoughts on that, Chris. When we talked to John last week, we talked about this from the camera's perspective, which is, we don't have a budget, we don't have the time, and it's one of the things that makes it more television and less cinematic film, is that we know that we have to cover so much of this on a wide shot, and that puts such an onus on the actors. They have to perform this as if it was play-like in that sense. And we're covering it from the camera. And these are conscious things that we've had to work within based on time, budget, those kinds of things in the class. And then the other thought that occurred to me while you were talking is, this is what we're working on. A lot of times with the crew, they wonder what takes so long. So our lights are set up. Why now does it take so long for you to just say a line? Well, we had to block all that out.
Yes.
That stuff is not in the script. And as much pre-production as we do, until we see where they are, how we need them to move, we had to create that movement with Lexi going down and pulling out her papers, which provided that opportunity then for Alicia to grab the phone and start that all had to, we need a few minutes now. Once we get there, once the camera is happy, John and the crew's happy, now we have to work those things out. And that's completely independent of what we're then asking the actors to do in terms of delivering emotion lines. Very complex.
Yes, because now it's not just setting that blocking. Now the actor has to motivate it.
Absolutely.
Because if they don't motivate it, then they're just doing blocking, which isn't the character existing in real life, right?
And they haven't seen it before that. There's no way to do that in advance based on where we've positioned these guys for lights and mics and all that other stuff.
Yes. And so to come full circle on that fantastic point is all the way back around for actors, is that the connection and the personalization of the character is of paramount importance for multiple reasons, but this is one of the most important, because when you get to set, when you show up for work, you don't necessarily know what they're going to ask you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so you must be prepared with that character, and you must know your lines backwards and forwards. And beyond that, you must know the beats. You must know all of this, because more often than not, they're never going to ask you. They're never going to talk to you about it. You know, I tell actors a lot is that working on Z-Join, it's like, this is the way I know you and I love to work. But this isn't usually how it is, right? Usually the actor, it's like, here's your mark. And if this would have been another situation, we just said, okay, we're going to turn here, do that. Blake, great, got it, awesome, let's go. What?
Cool.
Hold on, right? You know, and they need, but if I train actors this way, it's like, if you're settled and you've personalized and you're connected, they can throw a million things at you. You can be like, you got it. Yes, sir. You got it. Done. Boom. I'm on it. Right. And that's what we demand of them to do, because all of that work goes into shooting this single moment, but the actor can totally derail it if they can't execute what you're asking them to do. And then all of that prep, all of the lighting, it's useless without them executing these simple moves.
That has to be the most important. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah, because it's good knowing that going in as a director. Then you're going to be able to have a conversation and a dialogue with actors. It's going to be so much more proactive. It'll be good for them, and ultimately it's better for you, because you're then going to be able to get what you need to get within the time constraints you have to deal with. Also, directors, how many different things do we look at? I mean, you're looking at acting, you're looking at lighting, you're looking at the angle, you're looking at, oh, that didn't work the way I thought it would work. Now we got to change it. Usually actors get ignored, you know, but they can't be. It's like, that has to be part of our dialogue.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Excellent. To finish this out?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
You think I let Carlos, the janitor, impregnate me?
Well, I don't know. You said he works for the school. Why do you even have his number then?
The stupid STA from our trick class made us exchange numbers because the class is always changing. Jesus, Jeannie!
Oh. Well, then, who's the father?
Hey, yeah!
Great job, guys. Thanks.
Cool, right. I love that reaction for Alicia, just because it's like that, as we've gotten to know the character, you can tell in that sense, when as a director I'm looking for, okay, we think the actor knows the character. Does she does, like with that reaction, because especially what we were talking about earlier, that okay, this is a big moment for Jeannie, this is different, this is an evolution of the character in this moment that she has to play, but yet we don't, you know, human beings, we don't ever really change, right? There's a lot of theories on that, right? But there's always those pieces of us in there. And that was beautiful, because there was Jeannie once again, right? Oh, I screwed it up. The one moment I step out and I messed it up.
Pulls right back in.
Right back in. And then you saw that beautifully articulated in Lisa's reaction there. Last thing I kind of love to look at is sort of going back to this idea of doing less isn't really just the blanket advice you want to give an actor when working on camera. Because it was a good example here for Lexi, is that her reaction was a little larger than life, almost theatrical like in that, but that's absolutely what was needed there, because the shot is wider. And one of the technical things actors learn, and it can be helpful, and then you know when to throw it out the window, because you never know what's going to happen on a set, but you can have a general idea of, okay, it's why sometimes really a pros will want to know what the shot is. Like if you're a director and an actor asks you for a shot, it's not that they're trying to encroach or anything. It's because in their mind, they're like, okay, I've got to change my performance based on how they're going to shoot it. So if we start with the master wide in this case, the general rule is that your performance is a little larger, a little bigger, a little more theatrical than in a close-up. So a close-up might be where you can say, okay, you want to do less, you want to bring it down. So what's really interesting to see is if you do the same scene and that same thing, and then she would adjust from the wide shot, and then when we go in close, she would do the scene the same for continuity, but it would be a little less. It would be appropriate for the frame.
Nice.
And we spend a lot of time, in training talking about that. It's like medium close-up versus, it's why I also tell actors, You must get behind the camera and understand this because it's going to affect how you perform and what you need to do. And ultimately, you need to give them what they need in the editing room so that they can cut to it. And,
Yep.
and that's really, really important for actors to understand. And the really good
What's
ones
going
get that. Yeah, because it's like, I mean, we've all been in editing. You've been in an editing room. We all have where like, oh man, yeah, cut to her. She's always on it. She's got continuity, great reactions. We need to cut to something, cut to her. So I tell actors, like, up your chances of being cut to, right? Because it's like if you're active and alive and connected, you're going to give them more to work with later on, months later, when they're sitting in the editing room trying to put this thing together.
Absolutely. And a couple things on that. One is I want to thank Isaac who did this first assembly. It's not even really a rough cut quite yet. We haven't looked at it. We haven't decided, do we need to stay longer or shorter? Does Jeannie need a reaction moment? We have those things. We just haven't had time yet to put them together. But I want to thank him for taking a crack at it, using the notes from the shoot that night as to what we were seeing in our head. But
Yeah.
just so everybody knows, it's not mixed audio. That's just scratched audio, and we haven't begun to go in and work on it. But to your point, Chris, it is about getting enough coverage, and that's one of the things I think we both look for, not just when you work with actors, but in coverage as a director. I'm always editing in my head. Do I have something to go to? Do I have a shot that's going to give the moment the right feel? And it's one of the reasons that we take as many takes as we do. But for the actors now, in this compressed schedule, we've lost our rehearsal time,
Yeah.
So these guys are so good to come in, and it's the first time that they're getting out there running through it. It's the first time that they're seeing and creating blocking cues. We have technical things that we're still solving, and they just go right to work. So they're really, really awesome.
Yeah, fantastic. And Isaac did do a great job putting this together, and it's just a short notice and with all the situation that we're dealing with. And it's good to point out that it's like in the final, it's like looking at rough cuts, or even like you said, it's not even a rough cut yet, right? It's just a general like assembly. Is that you're starting to see how you want to craft the performances even, and for actors, like the more that they give you, then the more, once you get into that fine tuning stage, the more the editor has to work with. And that was a great example of, and a really good job there from Lexi, is that she gave what she needed to give in the wide shot. Well, obviously we're not going to stay on that shot that long in the final cut.
Right.
So that's why you get to break it up. And a lot of times watching those cuts, it's very different live than when you come and you see the first cut or a rough cut, because it's just very raw. And then we've all seen that. It's like first time, it's like the reaction, like, oh my God, we messed up, we didn't get it. But what you don't realize is you have it even in performances that way too. A lot of actors, younger actors, will watch themselves for the first time in a rough cut, and it's really like, oh my God, I thought I was doing that. Like, no, you were. Like, you got to look at how it's going to be cut. It's almost like you got to see several steps ahead.
Absolutely.
As well. That's what directors and editors do. But it's a great example of all of that. They're such strong performers, both of them, and it's a great example of how this is done, and then what, as a director, you should probably look for and what you want to tweak. Yeah.
So this has been really helpful, I think, for everybody. Can we go back, and I think you've mentioned it a couple times, but let's talk about it just specifically now. I think a mistake that a lot of non-actor directors make, and first-time directors, is how to speak with one of the actors to get what they want. So they'll have an idea in their head, but that ability to find the right language and the right way to communicate is really important for young filmmakers to understand, I believe, because I believe it starts to create that symbiotic relationship between actor and director. How do you, for example, I've seen first-time directors go up and mimic a line or say it this way, and that's just a cardinal no-no.
Yes.
Talk to me in this scene going up, and if you wanted to adjust Lexi or Alicia, what kind of words are you using? What are you saying to them?
Yes. It's inclusive language for sure. Because you want, it's like in any endeavor, you want the actor to join you in the vision. So that it's not just, okay, I heard you, once again, the Kim Novak thing, stand on your mark, say your lines, look pretty. No, we want more from the actor. We want the actor to be a part of this. So if I want the adjustment, a lot of times I usually start with a question of just, okay, if we'd been doing it a little while, I might say, how did that one feel? What are you feeling about it? And then I know the reason it's not to deflect anything. It tells me how the actor feels about it. If she to turn and be like, no, I thought that was really good. I felt really connected. I'm like, okay, it's not translating that way. So then I have the opportunity to say what I'm seeing, and then the actor can then have the opportunity to say, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, I think it's just in this one moment here. What are you trying to make her feel? What do you need to accomplish here in this moment? And U's and I's are always, we're talking about the character. And then she could tell me, I'm going for this. I'm like, oh, okay. So if that's what we're trying to do, why don't you try to be a little more forceful with her at that moment, because it's not reading. So that's a much more proactive adjustment than to just simply say, can you be louder? Can you be angrier? Because we don't really know what's going on in her head. Once I find that out, then I might be able to it's like, okay, that's a great choice, but it's not reading. And the actor may not know that, like, oh, okay. And then the really good ones will know, okay, I know what I need to do. They're not getting it. Next take, I'll give it to them. That's proactive. That's working, not dictating. And I think there's a big difference there.
And as an actor yourself, Chris, are there things that you do want to hear from a director? What kind of cues are helpful to you that the director can be thinking about before they approach you?
I want the believability. So I want the director to tell me whether or not it's reading, because there's a dynamic that occurs, especially with really good actors, is that you're working often with a partner and you're really feeling it, right? There's a loop going on there. There's a connection, but the camera's not getting any of it, meaning that you have to play to the camera. So I need the director to tell me whether the choices I'm making, the camera is getting them. And then if it's not, then I can adjust. I'm not going to necessarily change the choice because that's my connection, right? But I can adjust the way I perform the choice so that now the camera has it. This is also why, coming full circle, why just telling actors just do less doesn't work. Because there may be a situation where I'm going to do less and the director says, we're not getting it. You got to dial it up. So that's as an actor, that's what I'm looking for director. I want honesty. I want them to tell me if it's reading, because I might feel great about it. I mean, it's like, and it's not that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I've got the connection, but it might be the angle. It just may be that a lot of times a live event, that's the theater piece, right? You're playing to a live audience, but it's flat on camera. And that psychological dynamic is a really interesting thing. And you can't know that necessarily as an actor, having to also deal with all your blocking and all this kind of stuff.
Brilliant.
You need the director to tell you that. And the really good ones do. Like they'll be honest with it. They won't say, that was crap, you need to do it again. They'll say, I think we're not getting this. Tell me what's going on. And then I love when I hear that, because I'm like, okay, here's what I'm trying. And then they can tell me whether we're doing it or not. Yeah.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Now, we've touched on a little bit, you have for us the difference between stage and camera performance. Can you talk a second about how episodic work is a little bit different? So how long have Lexi and Alicia been able to live with these characters, and what's the advantage and disadvantages of that?
Definitely. I think episodic work is probably the closest to theater for an actor that you get on camera, because in a play, you will live with the character typically longer than you will in a film. Because especially depending on what your role is in the film. Now, if you have the lead in the film and you're in every scene, if it's that kind of film, it's going to be different. That's theatrical in the sense that you're living with this person for a while. But the episodic world is completely different than even that, because you're not only having to live with the character in a time frame, you then have to go away for the summer, so to speak, and then come back next season and then continue the development of this person. So you're in effect, if you think of some of the very successful episodic shows, they go on for years. So you're in effect living with this character for years, right? It's almost episodic. The episodic reality almost goes into real time. Like I said earlier about how drama is accelerated, characters live faster than we do in real life. Well, the episodic, not so much, right? Because you have to, you're living fast in the season, but then you still have to have this character. And I think that really, if you're successful with it, it's almost like putting on a really, we all have like those old pair of jeans that we just love or something like that, familiar, right? It's like just putting those back on again, and you instantly feel good because you're back in these jeans. And doing episodic work and staying in a character that long is kind of like that. Is if
Nice.
you really have made the connection and personalized it, when you come back to her or him, it's comfortable, it's familiar, it's comfortable, even though the situations they're going through may not be comfortable, but it's comfortable for the actor because he or she knows exactly who this person is, and they know exactly where they are when they put back on that character.
Nice. Well, this has been really so helpful. I have one kind of a summary question for you. Um, and that is, a lot of our students on the crew side, even if they want to be directors, they have a very technical path that takes them through cinematography, editing, even some screenwriting. But could you recommend any classes on your side that might be beneficial, and why for an upcoming director?
Yes. Acting for camera 1 and 2 for certain, because I love that you mentioned that the path is technical, because it is. You're dealing with equipment and things that you have to know very specifically. Well, acting on camera is just as technical. And if you really had to sum up the major difference, in my view, of acting on the stage and acting on camera, be it episodic or whatever, it's that the camera piece is technically oriented. The stage piece is much more fluid and organic. So by taking and acting for camera, that class focuses on the technical reality of performance, hitting marks, sitting in a certain way and not looking like you're sitting in that way, all delivering an authentic in the moment performance, even though you have all of these technical realities to do it. The actor is not, they don't miss out on the tech. And we spend a lot of time talking about that and getting into that. So being on a technical path, going right into acting for camera, you're just looking at another aspect of this technical world that you're entering into. And I think it's highly recommended. In the same way I tell actors, get in an editing room, get behind the camera, learn this piece of it. Technicians, future directors must do the opposite, get in front of the camera. It doesn't mean this is what you're going to do. It means that you are treating your craft seriously. You're in this to be a professional, and you want to know every possible aspect of what's going to go into that single shot when you're the one who's in the director's chair, and or in your cinematographer, or you're an assistant, and you're in any of these shows. You know exactly what everything is supposed to look like and how it's supposed to feel, and you can't do that without getting in front of the camera and feeling that technical piece. But I would say, if that scares you, realize that it is absolutely just an extension of the technical path you're already on. It's very, in that way, it's very different from stage acting. And acting for camera in the classes and the way I approach them, I approach it with that goal in mind. So it's not just another acting class. This is a camera acting class, and we're going to be technically focused.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
great. Well, listen, let's end there. I think that we've given folks enough to think about, take a look at.
Yes.
In closing, I'd like to say thank you for doing this, but also thank you for this whole project. It's been one of my most exciting and pleasurable professional experiences to partner up and work with you. And not just for you and I, but to see two disparate curriculums and programs that
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of interaction before, to now have this deeply entwined interaction. It's a fantastic opportunity, and I want to thank you for that as well as today.
I appreciate that. Let me echo that. Is that one of the best professional experiences in my entire life and career has been my partnership with you, and it's been so dynamic, and it's been such a fulfilling piece. And I think why it's been so fulfilling is that not only this great connection and relationship that we've been able to develop, and our views on these things are very similar in what we're trying to accomplish, and you don't always get that out there in the professional world, and so it's such a beautiful thing when it happens. But also how that's been able to extend to the classes and the combination of the programs and the students, which is what it's all about. So I echo that, and can never thank you enough for being willing. The first time we got together and be like, hey, you want to do this? And like, I guess so. Here we go. And just that willingness is just so rare, and so I thank you so much, and I will always be grateful for that.
Same here, Chris. You guys be well, be healthy, and we'll talk soon. And I can't wait to get back into filming our project, whenever that may be. Cheers. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, man.